There are new reports suggesting that we almost had a blockbuster, massive three-team trade at the NHL trade deadline, which would have involved the Carolina Hurricanes, the Vegas Golden Knights, and the Toronto Maple Leafs, and would have involved some top players in the league, including Mikko Rantanen and Mitch Marner. We'll discuss what was discussed, what we learned, and what we believe is the reasons why it didn't happen coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're talking about a huge blockbuster trade that was discussed, ultimately did not happen, but it was quite the scenario and really could have changed the landscape of the NHL had it actually gone down. And a couple of things that we've learned here, just sure feels like the Vegas Golden Knights have had a lot of interest in Mitch Marner for an extended period of time. Now, this is not the only time we've heard of a trade rumor involving a lengthy discussion involving Marner potentially going to Vegas. Apparently, there were also talks dating back to last summer where it was just a one-on-one conversation between the Vegas Golden Knights and the Toronto Maple Leafs that would have also sent Marner to Vegas, when apparently the centerpiece that the Leafs were looking for in that trade was Shea Theodore. And it obviously wouldn't have been a one-for-one trade, but Theodore was wanting to be the centerpiece of that trade. Going back in Vegas, did not want to include him. They had every intention of signing him to a long-term deal, which they have since done. This trade, of course, would be different. So as I mentioned, we have Vegas, Toronto, Carolina. So Toronto, from what we've heard, has attempted to trade Marner on multiple occasions. So would it be surprising if he leaves Toronto as a free agent? Not even the least little bit. I mean, it makes you wonder how seriously they will be a player in retaining his services. I mean, at the same time, when it comes time to free agency, it's a little bit different. Losing a player for nothing versus making a big trade. It's kind of hard to say how this is all going to play out, but it makes you think that the comments from Brad Treliving about changing the team's culture, changing the team's DNA, as he said, maybe it's just been something they've been having thoughts about for a longer period of time, and it just hasn't really presented the right opportunity to really be able to execute that. And now we have guys like Marner and Tavares on expiring contracts where they have a bigger opportunity to really shake things up. So we'll see. But essentially, from the Leafs standpoint, that's where things are at. We have the Carolina Hurricanes, who had acquired Mikko Rantanen from the Avalanche earlier in the year. They found out that, over time that he wasn't likely going to re-sign there. It was nothing personal. It's just, he was obviously really kind of shell-shocked from being traded out of Colorado where he was hoping to stay. He gets moved there. They're pressuring for a long-term deal. And eventually he just said, you know what, it's not something I'm prepared to do. So they had to, or at least they felt the need to trade him so that they didn't lose all those assets for nothing. And they could try to recoup another player to help them until they ultimately made the trade with Dallas, got Logan Stankoven and a bunch of picks. But this other conversation before that with Vegas and Toronto took place, which would have sent Rantanen to Toronto. Now, we do have confirmation from the Hurricanes that essentially he gave them a couple of teams, Rantanen did, that he would sign an extension with. He's like, I know that I'd be comfortable going like here, here, and here. Dallas was one. Apparently Toronto was one. And, well, obviously, he ended up in Dallas, as we now know. But, so the Leafs were trying to get Rantanen. So he would have been the centerpiece going from Carolina to Toronto. Toronto then would have sent Marner to Vegas. Now, of course, Vegas and the Leafs getting a star player out of this deal doesn't really leave anything going to Carolina. So that's kind of where things appear to have fallen apart. The notes here from James Myrtle of The Athletic basically say that the pieces coming from Vegas, just the Vegas failed to put together a package from their side of what they were going to be sending out to the other teams in the deal to make it so that the other teams wanted to proceed. So likely Carolina, would have had to been getting something back in return. Now we've heard, other rumors lately that they are willing to include Nick Hague in a trade because he's a pending restricted free agent. Probably can't afford to keep him right now. So Hague's available. Lots of speculation about the future of William Karlsson, that he might be on the block. They're trying to maybe move that money out, $5.9 million for 2 more years. Pretty good two-way centerman. Never really duplicated that 40-goal season he did in year one, but still been a good player for them for some time. Obviously I'm not sure what else they were willing to include, but certainly looks like a lot of their top guys they would have wanted to keep. Now, I don't know if they would have included guys like, Barbashev or anybody of that nature. Whether, like Mark Stone probably wouldn't have been involved. Jack Eichel wouldn't have been involved. I mean, there's a lot of talk about Alex Petrangelo's health. So as much as they might be willing to do that, and he's got a trade protection, he's probably a non-starter because of all those other effects, the things going on with him. So obviously Vegas failed to produce a big enough package to go, I would suspect mostly to Carolina here, to make this deal work. But ultimately, Marner would have been a Vegas Golden Knight. And now that's assuming he waived and approved this trade, which we don't know. We know that he did say no to going to Carolina. So from what we've heard, this is the first we've heard about this 3-team trade, but we do know that there were other conversations between Toronto and Carolina, and we know that the Toronto Maple Leafs had asked Marner to waive to go to Carolina in a trade for Rantanen, and he declined. So my suspicions are that it probably started off with Toronto, Carolina having talks with a Marner for Rantanen type of trade. He wasn't approving it. Maybe he was willing to approve Vegas, but not Carolina. I don't know, but that's not confirmed. And maybe they felt the need to bring a third team in, so they get a deal where Toronto still gets Rantanen, Marner goes to Vegas instead, and then obviously Vegas has to put assets in to see if Carolina will bite on their side, since they're losing Rantanen. And, well, obviously there could have been other pieces from Toronto and whatnot in there as well. It was likely a much bigger deal, but at the end of the day, things did not work out. That's why I do wonder about the longevity of the Mitch Marner free agency and how things are going to play out. I mean, does Carolina stand a chance to get him in free agency? I mean, they've been a team that's been, deep into playoffs numerous times. From what we hear, the lifestyle down there is pretty good. I mean, they're not on no state tax like Vegas is in, or the Florida teams, or Nashville, or Dallas. But, I don't know. I mean, it seems like the guys who seem to go there really seem to like everything about being there. So hard to say. So I honestly think it feels to me that Vegas is a heavy favorite to land Mitch Marner in free agency, but time will tell. I mean, clearly this 3-team trade would have shaken things up drastically. I really would have liked the Toronto Maple Leafs odds better at beating the Panthers with Rantanen versus Marner. No offense to Marner. He's been a heck of a productive player. One of the best offensive Maple Leafs to ever do it. Pretty decent two-way player, plays a lot in the penalty kill. Very important piece to that team. And he's, say what you want about him. But Rantanen brings that size and that physicality and that whole other element to the game that you don't get with Marner. And that would have come in handy big time against the Florida Panthers. The big difference for Florida to Toronto is Florida really pounded the Leaf D. They wore them down. And Toronto is not a big physical enough team to do that to the opposition. So that Florida was coming out, they were breaking out better. Their defense is not getting worn down. That plays a big role. But when teams like Florida, and to some degree Carolina too, they're always coming at you with that heavy forecheck, that dump and chase that they've perfected. It's tough to beat when they have the guys coming at you just pounding you shift after shift after shift. And that's what the Leafs were missing. So they clearly have recognized this. Trying to get a guy like Rantanen was the right move for Toronto. But unfortunately, things did not work out. Carolina felt the need to be kind of pressured into this. And we'll see. Lots of other talks, as I said, are speculation around Vegas being a player for Marner, what they might have to do cap-wise to make it happen. Going to be interesting to see for sure, but let me know your thoughts on this massive blockbuster 3-team trade that was being discussed. Obviously came somewhat close, but ultimately did not happen. And let me know what you think down in the comments. Is it something that you wish would have happened, or would it change the landscape drastically? Like Vegas might have had a better playoff by adding a guy like Marner. Toronto, I think, would have been better suited against the Panthers with Rantanen versus Marner. Hard to say for Carolina because we don't know exactly what they would get out of it. Vegas obviously wasn't willing to include some of the pieces that Carolina needed to make it happen, but ultimately they're the reason why this did not go through. But let me know what you think down in the comments. We'll discuss further. Of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around if you're new to the channel. I'll be back later with more news and rumors from around the entire league. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.